Hello, I'm Tom Georgi, and this is my new viola d'amore. And I have been working on it in a concentrated way for the last 10 months. And just this week, it finally has strings on it. And I wanted to introduce it to YouTube and to, well, anybody who's curious. And it sounds like this. So I chose to model this instrument after instruments of Carcassi. Carcassi made 3 violas d'amore that I'm aware of that have survived, and 2 of them I have examined myself. One of them made in 1761 and one made in 1783. And so what endeared this instrument, this model, I should say, this model to me is that unlike most violas d'amore, which have a single break from the neck root down to the mid part of the upper bout, this one has a second break from the middle of the lower bout down to the bottom. And this allows the instrument to be much more comfortably held under the chin of the player. And I am very much vindicated in my choice just by this one design aspect. And I have to say, you know, one of the reasons why I made this instrument myself instead of asking somebody else to do it was that, of course, every time you put a break in an instrument, it does create a weakness. And the players, the makers, I should say, that I had talked to about it, about Carcassi violas d'amore, they didn't want to contemplate making such an instrument because of the design. And of course something may go wrong that I don't expect yet, but both the exemplars that I examined, the 1761 one and the 1783 one, they're both quite healthy instruments, and I don't see anything about them that suggests that the design itself is an inherent flaw. Now, both of those instruments originally had this kind of tailpiece attachment. This is sometimes called the gamba type tailpiece attachment, and what it does is it allows for a much firmer, a much more rigid attachment of the tailpiece to the instrument than on a violin or viola, or the violas d'amore that have violin and viola type tailpiece attachments. And so what I'm going to be very interested to see in the next weeks as I play in the instrument is whether I can string it with gut strings and still have it to be very stable from the point of tuning. The first couple of days I'm very encouraged by what I find so far, but unfortunately when I finally finished this instrument I didn't have a set of gut strings around, and so the strings that you hear today are a mixture of rope core strings and dominants, and there are actually 2 gut strings. There's one there and one there. Yeah, so that is a design choice that I made that I felt makers would be unwilling or uninterested in doing for me, and it remains to be seen whether that choice of mine was a good one. But of course, if for some reason it turns out not to be a good one, I can just plane down that peg that's in the bottom and put in a conventional tail button and tailpiece with a tail gut. Another thing that making my own instrument allowed me to do was to choose to string the sympathetic strings in a scale. The sympathetic strings are tuned in a scale from C, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and well, in the G major scale actually. And I find this a much fuller and more resonant way to arrange the sympathetic strings, and it is also the only 18th century specific tuning for the sympathetic strings. Now don't worry, if you want to do it some other way, feel free. This is the viola d'amore. It is an area where you should go to exercise your imagination and your creativity and your fantasy and all of those other good things. I was very pleased when I was putting this instrument together to notice that there's two sections of the sympathetic strings, and normally you don't pay any attention to what happens between the bridge and the saddle, but as it happens, the way I've got this one set up, there's a minor ninth between the two. So that's the bottom C string, and there's a minor ninth above it just on the other side of the bridge. Yes, so it was a lot of work. There are a lot of things that I had to figure out for myself because I chose to go down a different path than even a viola d'amore path. I chose to take some side jaunts, as it were, and so far I'm quite pleased. So let's just go through the rest. I started out playing a little bit for you. That was the ritornello from Vivaldi's 392 viola d'amore concerto. Let's get a little bit further in it. So one of the reasons for tuning the sympathetic strings in a scale is that you get support for all notes, not just the D major triad. So the next thing in that piece is actually this passage. So normally you would have support, the resonating support for it, as I hope you can hear. But you also have, because of the way I set up the sympathetic strings, you have support for the upper. You have support for those strings as well. So I'm very much looking forward to enjoying what other things I might be able to invent and do with this different way of approaching the tuning of the sympathetic strings. Yeah, I think that's enough for today. This is the first of a series of videos that I'll be posting on my channel over the next... Oh, maybe I should just show you one last little thing. You see, mostly violas the way I have carved heads at the top of the instrument. But one of the things, that is one thing I definitely didn't want to try to learn how to do. But as it happens, the Juilliard exemplar, the 1783 Carcassi viola d'amore is actually in the collection of instruments at Juilliard, and that one, I'm pretty sure, has the original peg box. I'm very happy, well, whether this peg box design is original to Carcassi or not, I'm very happy with it because it's actually a very strong and effective peg box. I did jam 2 more pegs in it than the original would have had. It's got 14 strings, and as a result, these pegs in the playing string area are rather close together, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be just fine as long as I rearrange. From time to time I rearrange the peg heads so that they're, you know, perpendicular to the length of the peg box, and I'll be able to reach them easily. The strings have only been on for a couple of days, so the strings continuing to stretch, and the pegs are not perpendicular to the length of the peg box at the moment. But one of the fun things is that there's a kind of a little moon carved out of peg of the scroll itself, which I thought was a lovely detail. Anyway, I'm sure I'll have much more to say about this in coming weeks and months, and I look forward to playing a piece for you at length instead of these little tiny excerpts. But for today, that's it. Thanks for listening. Take care.